Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Good Tuesday News Day, which means we're going to tell you about all the good stuff that's happening either today or last week or whatever we found, because there is good stuff happening out there. It's not all war and famine and economic upheaval or whatever. So let's go ahead and get into our headlines today on Before Coffee. Good news! Tuition will be free at New York City Medical School thanks to a $1 billion gift.
Good news, Sweden is now part of NATO.
The 3.5% rule, how a small minority can change the world.
And 1 century of reforestation in the United States has helped reduce global warming.
And Paul McCartney in our culture segment tells us about what inspired him to write Yesterday.
Those stories and more, which is not only National Strawberry Day, National Polar Bear Day, it is also National Retro Day. February 27th, 2024 on Before Coffee.
All right, let's go with our first news story here from Ayana Archie on NPR. The $1 billion donation from Dr. Ruth Gossersman to Albert Einstein College of Medicine is one of the largest ever charitable gifts to an educational institution in the United States. Please don't move your camera after I've already set up your camera angle, because now I have to reset it up again. Just leave it alone. I can see what you're doing. Students at Albert Einstein College of Medicine will no longer have to pay tuition after the school received a $1 billion gift. Ruth Gossersman, who is the chairperson of the college boards of trustees, made the donation using money left to her by her late husband, financier David Gossersman, who was a friend of Warren Buffett and whose company, First Manhattan Company, was an early investor in the Berkshire Hathaway, according to Forbes. Students, I don't know what Berkshire Hathaway is.
It's an investment firm.
Oh, okay. So he just made bank off of other people after the line.
Huge
Bank because he invested in the line. Students in their 4th year of Einstein, located in the Bronx in New York City, will be reimbursed for the spring 2024 semester and begin in August. Tuition will be free in perpetuity, the school said Monday. This donation radically revolutionized our ability to continue attracting students who are committed to our mission, not just those who can afford it, the school said. Additionally, it will free up and lift our students, enabling them to pursue projects and ideas that might otherwise be prohibited. Each year, well over 100 students enter Albert Einstein College of Medicine in their quest for degrees in medicine and science. Gossersman said, "They leave as superbly trained scientists and compassionate and knowledgeable physicians with expertise to find new ways to prevent diseases and provide the finest health care to communities here in the Bronx and all over the world." She added, "I'm very thankful to my late husband, Sandy, for leaving these funds in my care, and I feel blessed to be given the great privilege of making this gift to such a worthy cause." If she gave a gift of $1 billion, right, this is a hack for anybody out there if you become a billionaire. You can write it off on your taxes that you got $1 billion this year because, hey, you donated it. It's charity. Hey, I don't have to pay tax on the gift basically. Instead of actually getting the gift of the funds, she's basically donated it so that she doesn't have to pay, probably $250 million in taxes on it or something. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that she donated money, but I know what she's doing there. She's trying to avoid paying taxes on it. So instead of it going to everyone, it's just going to this one school, the 100 students that go to the school, instead of 200, the taxes that could pay for, that could make a new road or something. Instead, nope, it's only going to these 100 students.
That's right.
But to be fair, the Gossersman have donated heavily to the school in the past, probably also to not pay taxes. Gossersman joined the Einstein College of Medicine's Children Evaluation and Rehabilitation Center, CERC, in 1968, where she conducted research about learning difficulties in children. While at CERC, she started the Adult Literacy Program, and became the founding director of the Emily Fisher Landau Center for Treatment of Learning Disabilities. She's also a clinical professor at Emerita of Pediatrics at Einstein. So basically, lucky them, her husband made bank at an investment firm, and they get to get all that money for their students. So if you go there, congratulations. If you don't go there, I don't know. I guess you should have gone to Einstein, Albert Einstein College of Medicine,
I
and
want
then
to
you would
go
have got
there.
free tuition. You know, it's something in America when it's like, oh my God, free tuition. Germans be like, Germans don't have to pay for tuition. The education's free. Anyways, your story. That's my short good news for everyone in the Bronx, I guess.
Cool. I want to go to the Albert Einstein School. That would be cool on a diploma.
Maybe you can. Maybe they take a late admission.
You're too old. Wait.
I don't know. There's no age limit to going to school. I'm so, like, friggin' Robert says that as well. I'm too old to go to school. I'm like, you're 36. That's not too old to get an education. Like, what?
I went back to school. I went to college when I was 30.
Yeah.
Well, I got my master's. I got my bachelor's when I was like 40 or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hungary's parliament steps up to the plate. This is the news, the good news in the world. I broke down and got my free article from the New York Times for this week, whenever they go off. This is from Andrew Higgins in the New York Times. Hungary's parliament voted Monday to accept Sweden as a new member of NATO, sealing a major shift in the balance of power between the West and Russia, set off by the war in Ukraine. The vote allowed Sweden, which has been long non-aligned, to clear the final hurdle that had blocked its membership in NATO and held up the expansion of the military alliance. Hungary's authoritarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, whose Fidesz party is a large majority in parliament, had maintained cordial relations with President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia, in case you're confused him with another Vladimir Putin. Despite the war in Ukraine, and had stalled for 19 months on putting Sweden's NATO membership to a vote in the 199-member legislature. His decision to finally allow a vote followed a visit to Budapest, the Hungarian capital, on Friday by the Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson. During the visit, it was announced that Sweden would provide Hungary with 4 Swedish-made Gripen jets, can't call it a bribe, in addition to the 14 its Air Force already uses, and that the maker of the jets, Saab, would open an AI research center in Hungary, a bribe. The formal admission of Sweden to NATO still requires some procedural paperwork. Once finalized, it will, along with Finland's entry last year, give a significant boost to NATO's military strength in the Baltic Sea and reduce Russia's ability to dominate the waterway, which controls access to ports in St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and Ust-Luga, an important transit port for Russian energy exports. In the past, on social media, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed Hungary's decision, saying that Sweden's membership will make us all stronger and safer. Sweden has already been providing weapons and other support to Ukraine, so its membership in NATO won't immediately change Ukraine's fortunes on the battlefield, but it delivers a grave blow to what Mr. Putin declared as one of the principal reasons for his full-scale invasion, keeping NATO away from Russia's borders. We're in your borders anyway. The Hungarian parliament endorsed Sweden's admission to the alliance by a large majority, with only 6 members of the far-right party, Our Homeland Movement, voting against. The Our Homeland Movement sounds Nazi. Come on, Hungarians. You don't want to be Nazis, do you? The Fidesz party and mainstream opposition groups all voted in favor. The unusual display of consensus faltered when the opposition called for a minute of silence in memory of Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader who Russian authorities say died on February 16th in an Arctic prison camp. Legislators opposed to Mr. Orban all stood to honor Mr. Navalny, but the Prime Minister and his Fidesz allies remained seated. Well, aren't you just some butt boys for Putin, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Orban thanked his party members for keeping their cool in the Navalny affair and explaining Fidesz's decision to stay seated, said, "Chauvinists do not deserve respect," claiming that Mr. Navalny had derided Georgians during Russia's invasion of their country in 2008. Mr. Orban said he should not be honored. "Otherwise, may you rest in peace," Mr. Orban told Parliament. The overwhelming vote in favor of NATO's expansion followed the visit of Budapest by Mr. Christensen that Mr. Orban said had repaired strained relations between the countries and made it possible for Hungary to accept Sweden as a member of NATO. Hungary's long delay in accepting Sweden puzzled and exasperated the United States and other NATO members, raising questions about Hungary's reliability as a member of the alliance committed to the principle of collective defense. Hungary, which has repeatedly promised not to be the last holdout, became the final obstacle to Swedish entry into NATO after the Turkish parliament voted on January 23rd to approve membership. All other NATO members approved Sweden's bid in 2022, just months after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Orban has a long record of using his country's veto power over key decisions in Europe that try to extract money from or other rewards. That pattern was on display during not only his foot dragging over Sweden's NATO membership, but also his opposition to a European Union financial package for Ukraine worth $54 billion. Mr. Orban relented this month on approving EU aid for Ukraine, a retreat that raised hopes he would quickly order his party to hold a vote in Parliament on Sweden. Mr. Orban had assured Mr. Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, on January 24th that Hungary would ratify Sweden's entry at the first possible opportunity. But when the opposition legislators called a session of Parliament on February 5th to vote on Sweden's membership, Fidesz members boycotted the session. Even when Hungary's acceptance of Sweden into the alliance, the long, drawn-out process to get to this point is likely to leave a bitter aftertaste in the belated assent to the expansion of NATO, to which Hungary makes only a modest contribution, will not quickly change Mr. Orban's reputation as a troublemaker, more interested in cozying up to Mr. Putin, with whom he held an amicable meeting on October during a visit to China, than in supporting the alliance. Hungary, whose air force depends heavily on Gripen jets from Sweden, had offered multiple and often shifting explanations for the long delay in voting on Swedish membership. It has cited scheduling hiccups, criticism in Sweden of democratic backsliding by Mr. Orban's increasingly authoritarian government, teaching materials used in Sweden schools, and comments made by Mr. Christensen years before he took office. Mr. Orban's tough stand on Sweden, as well as his initial blocking of the Ukraine aid package, reflected his penchant for trying to establish his small country. Hungary has only 10 million people, accounts for just 1% of the economic output of the European Union, as a force to be reckoned with on the European political stage. That approach has infuriated fellow European leaders, but rocking the boat and defying mainstream opinion on both NATO and European Union has increased Mr. Orban's standing with Europe's far right and in segments of the far left, both of which are often partial to Mr. Putin. They often see Mr. Orban as courageous, scourge of conventional wisdom. Sweden, like most members of the European Union, has long accused Hungary of undermining democracy and violating minority rights, but after a right-leaning government came to power in Stockholm last, Sweden retreated from criticism of Hungarian domestic policy. Admission to NATO requires the unanimous support of the alliance members. Finland was admitted to the alliance last April, but the strategic defeat that move dealt to Mr. Putin had been undermined by the delays in approving Sweden. There's your story. Back to you.
I mean, it's good that Sweden finally got through, because Hungary really has been a menace here in Europe, just sitting around being like, no, everything's fine. It's like, no, please stop doing everything you're doing. How did this happen? Yep. Like I said, I've said before, I would not be surprised if somehow they get kicked out. of everything because they're just countering all of the progress that people want to do, and they have to be wrestled and convinced to do. Like, Hungary is just a menace right now.
Well, if they change leaders, they'd probably go all right.
That's what I'm saying. They have to either change leaders or become a freaking Russian satellite state, because I don't know what's gonna happen.
Well, if Trump gets elected, the United States is leaving NATO.
Yeah.
Then what are they doing? They go, okay, we'll get back to the United States. Oh, yeah? Okay. Sure. Right.
The world's a crazy place.
So, yeah, there's a vested interest in Trump losing for all of Europe. Back to you.
All right. Let's cover my long story, which is from the BBC by David Robson. The 3.5% rule. The idea that a minority can change the world. In 1986, millions of Filipinos took to the streets of Manila in a peaceful protest and prayer in the People's Power movement. The Marcos regime folded on the fourth day. In 2003, the people of Georgia ousted Edward Shevardnadze through the bloodless Rose Revolution, in which protesters stormed the Parliament building holding the flowers in their hands. While in 2019, the presidents of Sudan and Algeria both announced they would step aside after decades in office, thanks to peaceful campaigns of resistance. In each case, civil resistance by ordinary members of the public trumped the political elite to achieve radical change. There are, of course, many ethical reasons to use non-violent strategies, but compelling research by Erica Chenoweth, a political scientist at Harvard University, confirms that civil disobedience is not only the moral choice, it's also the most powerful way of shaping world politics, by a long way. Looking at hundreds of campaigns over the last century, Chenoweth found that nonviolent campaigns are twice as likely to achieve the goals as violent campaigns. And although each exact dynamics will depend on many factors, she has shown it takes around 3.5% of the population actively participating in protests to ensure serious political change. Chenoweth's influence can be seen in the recent Extinction Rebellion protests, whose founders say they have been directly inspired by her findings. So just how did she come to these conclusions? Needless to say, Chenoweth's research builds on the philosophies of many influential figures throughout history: the African-American abolitionist Sojourner Truth, the suffrage campaigner Susan B. Anthony, the Indian independence activist Mahatma Gandhi, and the my throat's got clogged there, and the U.S. civil rights campaigner Martin Luther King. All have convincingly argued for the power of peaceful protests. And I think some of those even got killed for their peaceful protests. How ironic. Yet, Chenoweth admits that when she first began her research in the mid-2000s, she was initially rather cynical of the idea that nonviolent actions could be more powerful than armed conflict in most situations. As a PhD student at the University of Colorado, she had spent years studying the factor contributing to the rise of terrorism when she was asked to attend an academic workshop organized by International Center of Nonviolent Conflict, or the ICNC. A nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., the workshop presented many compelling examples of peaceful protests bringing about lasting political change, including, for instance, the People's Power protest in the Philippines. But Chenoweth was surprised to find that no one had comprehensively compared the success rates of nonviolent versus violent protests. Perhaps the case studies were simply chosen through some kind of confirmation bias. I was really motivated by some skepticism that nonviolent resistance could be an effective method for achieving major transformation in society, she says. Working with Maria Stephan, a researcher at the ICNC, Chenoweth performed an extensive review of literature and civil resistance and social movements from 1900 to 2006. That's pretty extensive. A data set that corroborated with other experts in the field. They primarily considered attempts to bring about a regime change. A movement was considered a success if it fully achieved its goals both within a year or of its peak engagement as a direct result of the activities. A regime change resulting from foreign military intervention would not be considered a success. For instance, a campaign was considered violent, meanwhile, if it involved bombings, kidnappings, the destruction of infrastructure, or any other physical harm to people or property, like the IRA, it sounds like. We were trying to apply a pretty hard test to nonviolent resistance as a strategy, Chenoweth said. The criteria was so strict that India's independence movement was not considered evidence in favor of nonviolent protests in Chenoweth and Stephen's analysis, since Britain's dwindling military resources were considered to have been a deciding factor, even if the protests themselves were also a huge influence. By the end of this process, they had collected data from 323 violent and non-violent campaigns, and their results, which are published in a book by Why Civil Resistance Works, The Strategic Lock of Nonviolent Conflict, were striking. Overall, non-violent campaigns were twice as likely to succeed in violent campaigns, and more than likely to succeed because they can recruit many more participants from a much broader demographic, which can cause severe disruption that paralyzes normal urban life and the functioning of society. That's right, it's way easier to ask your grandmother to go walk with a flower into the Parliament building than, Grandma, get the shotgun, we're gonna go shooting, that's a bit... I'm just saying, a lot less people have the resolve to sacrifice themselves and their lives in some cases, right? Because you can die in a violent protest. You can get trampled, you can get shot, right? There's way less people who are willing to have that resolve to do that. So it does kind of make sense in your head if you think about it, that there's way more people can walk down the street with you peacefully. In fact, the 25 largest campaigns that they studied, 20 were nonviolent and 14 of these were outright successes. Overall, the nonviolent campaigns attracted around 4 times as many participants, 200,000, as the average violent campaign, which was only 50,000. The People Power campaign against Marcos regime in the Philippines, for instance, attracted 2 million participants at its height, while the Brazilian uprising in 1984 and 1985 attracted 1 million, and the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia in 1989 attracted 500,000 participants. Having affected millions, the numbers really matter for building power in ways that can really pose a serious challenge or threat to entrenched authorities or occupations, Chenoweth says, and nonviolent protests seem to be the best way to get the widespread support. Once around 3.5% of the whole population has begun participating actively, success appears to be inevitable. There weren't any campaigns that had failed after they had reached 3.5% participation during a peak event, says Chenoweth. A phenomenon she has called the 3.5% rule. Besides People Power movement, the including singing revolution in Estonia in the late 1980s and the Rose Revolution in Georgia in the early 2003. Chenoweth admits that she was initially surprised by her results, but she now cites many reasons that nonviolent protests can garner such high levels of support. Perhaps most obviously, violent protests necessarily exclude people who abhor and fear bloodshed, whereas peaceful protests maintain the moral high ground. Chenoweth points out that nonviolent protests also have fewer physical barriers to participation. You do not need to be fit and healthy to engage in a strike, whereas violent campaigns tend to lean on support of the physically fit young men. And while many forms of nonviolent protests also carry serious risks, just think of China's response to Tiananmen. I can't say it. Tiananmen Square in 1989, very famous. The guy just standing in front of a tank being like, what the hell, dude, you gonna run me over? Chenoweth argues that the nonviolent campaigns are generally easy to discuss openly, which means that news and other occurrences can reach a wider audience. Violent movements, on the other hand, require a supply of weapons, tend to rely on more secretive underground operations that might struggle to reach the general population. And then there's actually a really cool image of an elderly woman in Algeria pointing her finger at one of the security people at a protest, being like, go back home! Go visit your grandmother! Stop standing here and accosting these people!
You naughty boy!
Yeah, by engaging broad support across the population, nonviolent campaigns also more likely to win support among police and the military. Because I know, some people don't see police officers as human, but they are. And that's probably why the violent protests are so more violent, because not only are they supposed to keep the peace, so to say, they're also getting attacked, and they, are humans. And humans, what do they do when they get attacked? They either fight or flight. So, yeah, and those police officers are trained to fight. So it's not really surprising that governments like it when you're peaceful, because there are also people who are like, the people are coming to cut my head off, I'm scared. Call in the airstrikes, instead of just like, they're just coming in here to talk to me and treat me like a human, and that's nice.
I In the United States, we have the agent provocateurs who
Yeah.
are opposite of the protesters, who show up to make the protesters look violent.
Yeah.
And they keep showing up and they go, I told you them Black Lives Matter people were violent. And they go, yeah, some white guy threw a brick.
I mean, famously even.
Oh, yeah.
There was
People in disguise.
secret cops hiding inside, right? Being like, oh,
Right.
yeah, we're totally also Black Lives Matter. And then you find out, oh, she's a friggin' cop. And she's causing people to become violent within the protest by, yeah, we should punch him, guys. Hey, guys, we should punch him, right? Anyone?
Right.
Yeah, let's throw rocks. Yeah.
As soon as I hear about a protest turning violent, I go, really? Who's making hay about it? The people who are against the protests. And it's like, immediately they jump on it. It went violent. And I was like, yeah, you probably planted somebody there.
Exactly. Conspiracies, man.
Right. And once it goes violent, who knows who started what?
But this article does go very long. We're only halfway through it, but I think that's a good place to stop. They just kind of go back more into like 3.5. This is the number that they found in their study. You can definitely do more studies on this to find, you can continue doing it. That's how kind of academia works. You can keep studying it, but I mean, you want to believe this conclusion, right? That you don't need a lot of people, you just need 3.5% of the population of a country to make change, and cause people to realize, wait a minute, people care about this. And she also, I guess that's an interesting point, she also considers consumer boycotts to be a very useful, because some people say, because I think when Palestine got attacked by all those bombs in Gaza, people started boycotting McDonald's, Starbucks, all sorts of things, because they're like, these people are actively accepting money from Israel or giving money to Israel to help them bomb Gaza. And there were people out there saying, this is not going to do anything. Not buying your Starbucks coffee is not going to save anyone. But according to the study here, specifically the consumer boycotts in South Africa, where black citizens refused to buy any products from white owners, resulted in an economic crisis where the country's elites were like, shit, we're not making any money because we just realized most of the population is black people and none of them are buying our stuff. Maybe we should treat them like humans instead of second-class citizens. Ooh, what an idea.
Little Steven of Bruce Springsteen's band started a boycott of Sun City, which was a resort where entertainers from the United States would go play for the rich white folks of South Africa. And he got every, at least, musician of conscience to not play South Africa. I'm sure there's plenty of little fashioned greedy bastards will take that money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, peaceful protests work. Of course, the United States had the boycott of Bud Light by the, I don't know what they're upset.
But those weren't peaceful because they were destroying them. They were still being violent, weren't they?
but the point I was making, it was they compared it to all you liberals got upset about Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima. No, well, nobody was shooting bottles of Aunt Jemima.
Nobody was crushing it with a bulldozer.
Nobody did anything anywhere except say, I'm not going to buy that rice. I'm not going to buy that Aunt Jemima until they take that, old stereotype off the Uncle Ben or
exactly.
The companies decided to do it without anybody shooting one box of rice. Okay.
But that's basically my story. Just keep in mind this was a general, kind of look, because most peaceful protests still failed 47% of the time. But in the book, they pointed out that you need momentum. So that's the key. The key is getting momentum, getting to that 3.5, and just keep going. Giving up too early is mostly why a lot of these peaceful resistances failed, because people are like, okay, it's not working, I'm going home. Once you give up, well, you give in. So that's my story.
You know what they say about people who generalize?
Yeah.
They're all completely useless. Anyway.
Dad joke of the day. I need to get a little alert. Dad joke of the day. Yeah.
There you go. There's your generalization joke. I don't know. Is it my story yet?
Yep.
This week in good news on Good Tuesday. What's is from Positive News? Positive.news is what it's called, the site. We'll get you two things. The UK quit a toxic energy treaty. Many will be baffled that such an agreement even exists, but the UK has become the latest country to announce its withdrawal from the controversial Energy Charter Treaty, ECT, which allows fossil fuel companies to sue governments for profit loss due to climate policies. Ooh,
Fuck off.
take
What
that
the
and
hell?
shove it up your ass. Seriously, these guys get subsidies. They get leasing drill leases that are
Not to interrupt your
years
story
long.
real quick, but this reminds me, you know the Scottish Tours guy, right? You watch that YouTube channel, right?
Uh-huh.
He did a video recently, or I watched a video recently by him about slavery in Scotland, and he said that until 2016, they were still paying back slave owners in Scotland for losing their profits because slavery was illegalized, and they were paying with taxpayers' money these people until 2016 when they finally finished paying them their lost profits. That's what that reminds me of. That reminds me of that.
Just living by the golden rule.
Crazy! Since 1700, people have been being paid because they own slaves.
Yep. Just living by the golden rule. He who makes the gold makes the rules.
God damn.
Or who has the gold makes the rules. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, continue.
Okay. The ECT uses an opaque system of secret courts to facilitate legal action. Ooh, there's your shady, what do they call it? The
Illuminati?
Yeah, there you go. The Illuminati, the Rothschilds and all that. I'm going, oh shit, we've lost billions of dollars this week. Let's do something. Let's invade a country. And it is the most litigated investment treaty in the world. In November, an oil firm used it to sue the EU, Germany, and Denmark over a windfall tax. Screw you guys. Nations have unsurprisingly been rushing to exit the treaty. France, Germany, and Poland have already pulled out. Denmark, Ireland, and the Netherlands are among those set to follow. Come on, Netherlands. It's on you. The UK joined the exodus on Wednesday, citing a failure of efforts to align the treaty with net zero. By leaving the Energy Charter Treaty, we've taken away one of fossil fuel companies' most used weapons to deter or punish climate action, said Cleody Ricard, trade campaign manager of Global Justice Now. Doing so has untied a straitjacket on our current and future capacity to enact the just transition we desperately need. And another good Tuesday story about the climate, hopefully helping the climate. It has to do with the United States and its reforestation that's been going on for over a century. This is a link provided by Positive.news, but they had a short story, so I linked a little bigger story. This is by Open Access. What's it called? agupubs.onlinelibrary.wiley.com. Advanced Earth and Space Scientist, written by Mallory Barnes, Quan Zhang, Scott Robertson, Lily Young, Elizabeth Berkolowski. Oh my lord. There's a lot of people on this. Christopher Oshie, Paul Story, Gabe Kuto, Kimberly Novick. All right, all them people contributed to this article. The abstract: restoring and preserving the world's forests are promising natural pathways to mitigate some aspects of climate change. In addition to regulating atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, forests modify surface and near surface air temperatures through biophysical processing. In the eastern United States, widespread reforestation during the 20th century coincided with an anomalous lack of warming, raising questions about reforestation's contribution to local cooling and climate mitigation. Using new cross-scale approaches and multiple independent sources of data, we uncovered links between reforestation and the response of both surface and air temperatures in the EUS. U.S. is the eastern United States. Ground and satellite-based observations show the EUS forest cool land surface by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius annually compared to the nearby grasslands and croplands, with the strongest cooling effect during midday in the growing season, when the cooling effect is 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. Young forests, 20 to 40 years, have the strongest cooling effect on surface temperature. Surface cooling extends to the near surface air, with forests reducing midday air temperature by up to 1 degree Celsius compared to non-forests. An analysis of historical land cover and air temperature trends showed that the cooling benefits of reforestation extend across the landscape. Locations surrounded by reforestation were up to 1 degree Celsius cooler than neighboring locations that did not undergo land cover change. And areas dominated by regrowing forests were associated with cooling temperature trends in much of the EUS. Our work indicates that reforestation contributed to the historically slow pace of warming in the EUS, underscoring reforestation's potential as a local climate adaptation strategy in temperate regions. Key points: reforestation in the eastern United States contributes to cooling the land surface and near surface air temperature. And the biophysical impacts of reforestation help explain the anomalous lack of 20th century warming in the eastern United States. Reforestation in temperate regions can provide biophysical climate adaptation by cooling surface and air temperature. The plain language summary, if you didn't understand that: a century of eastern U.S. reforestation has had a cooling effect that helps explain the lack of regional warming in the 20th century, which stands in contrast to warming trends across the rest of North America during the same period. Our study shows that forests across much of the eastern United States have had a substantially adaptive cooling benefit for surface temperature, and for the first time we demonstrated that this benefit extends to near surface air temperature. Therefore, reforestation in temperate zones could provide a complementary set of benefits, mitigating climate change by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, while also helping with adaptation to rising temperatures by cooling surface and air temperature over large regions. Yes, forests will trap a lot of moisture, which keeps things cool.
It's true.
So that is the United States leading the world, at least the eastern United States, in reforestation, because most of the old growth forests were killed off with the first wave of humans hitting from Europe. And
they were like, wow, look at all these trees. Let's chop them all down.
Right. And Europe never stopped and basically didn't practice reforestation.
I cannot tell you how many times I go, like, it's really windy here in the Netherlands, which is a flat place. There's no mountains, okay? And I go outside and I'm like, it's so fucking windy. If they just planted trees, there would be less wind because there would be something to catch. It's like, let's just have farmland. Let's have wind erosion. Yeah. That's way more fun. Dust in my nose. That's great. Now, I've always been yelling about Europe and not having enough trees, or at least the Netherlands. I can't speak for the rest of Europe. I know Norway has the most trees in Europe. But
they're using the Illinois model of just clearing forests and just, oh shit, maybe we'll plant some breaks every once in a while. Of course, you didn't have forests. You had ocean, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's had ocean there. There was no forest.
It was swamp.
But, hey, trees
the
will
Netherlands
grow there.
is basically Florida. So, northern Florida.
They're east. I've been reading a lot about trying to get the chestnut trees back going in the United States because, they're very, very, very good for the land. Anyway, that's my story on reforestation.
Stories. 3 stories combo there. I'm gonna
story.
Now off with the long stories. It's a very short story. Here's for my culture segment. I saw this interesting article on the Spiegel, which is a German website, or a German
Spiegel.
probably, huh?
Der Spiegel.
Yeah, it's a German news source, and it's an interview with Paul McCartney, remembering how his mother inspired him to write Yesterday. Yesterday, I don't know who it's written by. I don't think it's written by anyone. It's just written by someone. Somebody wrote this for the Spiegel. Yesterday is one of the most popular songs in music history. A lovesick song, yes, but not only. Now songwriter Paul McCartney has told why about his mother who died early and explains it in the line of the song. This is going to be really oddly translated because I've translated it from German, so might be missing some words. In 2021, a 2-volume, over 1,000-page work called The Lyrics by Paul McCartney was published, in which the singer, musician, and songwriter reflects on his lyrics for the Beatles, the Wings, and as a solo artist. Oh, I might actually read that. That sounds so interesting. I'm a lyrical person. I like music, but I love lyrics to music more. Like, I want to know what they're saying. All the artists I listen to are saying something in their songs, you know? I don't listen to people who are just, you know... I don't listen to a lot of pop music, I guess, because a lot of pop music is just repeating the same line, and they're not saying anything with depth. Anyways, you would think that there wouldn't be many questions left unanswered, but now McCartney has shed additional light on one of his most famous songs in a podcast. Yesterday is perhaps the most covered song in pop history. Paul McCartney has often been amused by the fact that some of the song's more prominent performers, such as Marvin Gaye and Elvis Presley, have changed the line. They turned, "I said something wrong? No, I long for yesterday," into, "I must have said something wrong." McCartney's clear admission of a mistake becomes a more macho, "I must have said something wrong," without acknowledging what. Paul McCartney always said that the melody for Yesterday came to him in a dream, and that he then asked all music connoisseurs around him whether they knew the song from somewhere. Nobody knew the melody, to which he initially sang a nonsense lyric with scrambled eggs. On a trip to Portugal that McCartney took with his girlfriend Jane Asher in 1965, the song lyrics came to mind. In his lyrics book, Paul McCartney reports that it was suggested to him that he was processing his mother's death in the song Yesterday. McCartney's mother, Mary, died of cancer in 1956. Her son, Paul, was only 14 years old, and it became clear to him years later that a line that, like, "Why she had to go, I don't know, she wouldn't say," could be about his mother. For the podcast, The Life and Lyrics, McCartney, together with Northern Irish poet Paul Muldoon, once again delved into the genesis of Yesterday in detail. The Liverpudlian also talk about
Liverpudlian.
Oh, there we go. He's a Pudlian.
Yeah,
also talks about what the wrong thing he said was. Accordingly, as a child, he was once mocked his mother for her accent being too high-spoken and too posh. It was not arsk, it was osk. "Mum?" he said. He was a little embarrassed, and later he thought, "God, I wish I hadn't said that." The thought stuck with him even after his mother died. Oh yeah, he probably made her feel really self-conscious. "Oh, my son thinks I'm lame because I have a posh accent. Hello, dear. Mom, don't talk like that. You make me look lame in front of all my friends." Sometimes so much happened to you in your young, formative years that you don't even appreciate it, says Paul McCartney, looking back today at the 22-year-old who wrote Yesterday for the Beatles. "I have a few of those little things that I know I've been forgiven for because they're nothing big, but still I think, if only I had an eraser, to be able to erase this moment would be better." In the continuation of the podcast, McCartney asked himself, does something like this happen? Do you unconsciously write lines in a song about a girl that are actually about your dead mother? And the songwriter answered himself, "I suppose that could be so. It somehow fits when you look at the text." So, there you go. The secret lyrics of Yesterday and how he thought it was about a girl, but it was about another girl, his mother, who died. Hope that made you feel good. I don't know. Sometimes crying makes me feel good. Actually, most times crying makes me feel good. I go out of my way to cry. It's this great stress relief, and it just makes you get your emotions out. Because I'm quite an emotional person, so go out there. Mm-hmm. I guess check out the podcast. It didn't really indicate which podcast it was. Let me find the episode of Pushkin. It's from Pushkin, the Paul McCartney and Paul Muldoon A Life in Lyrics, all about yesterday. You can find it on wherever you're listening to this podcast, probably. It looks like it's on Apple and Spotify. But, and also go listen to Yesterday, you know? And have a little cry from me to you. That's a different Beatles song.
I think he had more depth than he gave himself credit for.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It's like, are you sure you weren't trying to get through your mother's death? I don't know. Thanks, therapist, for opening that can of worms.
Well, he wrote Eleanor Rigby when he was like 22 or something, right?
Yeah, the same. I think it's the same album, right?
Like,
Yesterday and
no,
it was
Eleanor Rigby was on Revolver, I think.
What album?
Yesterday was on an album called Yesterday and Today or something.
Oh, it was like a single?
Were different versions in different countries, but it wasn't on Revolver.
Oh, okay. It was on. Okay.
Revolver.
My album's my favorite Beatle album, so that's the only one album I know. Like, I've literally listened to no other Beatles album except for the White Album.
You like the album with all the filler in it.
Yeah. What is that one? The one track by John Lennon, 21, 24,
no,
20...
Revolution 9. Number 9? Well, that's Ringo just gone. Number 9. Number 9.
Oh, yeah, number 9. Number 9.
Why am I doing this again, John? That's my best Liverpudlian accident.
Liverpudlian.
Why am I doing this again, John? I don't know. I could do John Lennon when I was a kid. But I was a kid then.
Yeah.
Okay. And this day in history, 1776, the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, North Carolinian revolutionaries defeated Loyalists during the American Revolution. I wonder if that's the Mel Gibson movie Patriot. That's because that was supposedly from Carolina. I wonder if that's what that's about. Moores Creek Bridge. I don't remember the movie. I remember the movie, but I don't remember. 1807, American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was born in Portland, Massachusetts, which is now Portland, Maine. Maine wasn't a state back in 1807. Thanks for pointing that out. They don't always do that. 1884, Paul Kruger, president of the South African Republic, signed a treaty in London that disavowed British authority over Transvaal. 1886, American lawyer and politician Hugo Black, who as Supreme Court Justice was known in support of the doctrine of total incorporation, was born. 1902, American novelist John Steinbeck, who is best known for The Grapes of Wrath and who summed up the bitterness of the Great Depression decade and aroused widespread sympathy for the plight of the migratory farm workers, was born. So, happy birthday, John Steinbeck. 1932 is the birthday of Elizabeth Taylor, who was born in London. His career, highlighted by award-winning portrayals of emotionally volatile characters, was often overshadowed by her highly publicized personal life. She was born in London. She's a British person. 1933, the Reichstag building caught fire, a key event in the establishment of the Nazi dictatorship. Of course, Reichstag is a famous case of, what do they call it? Self-immolation, or whatever you call it, where you make yourself the victim. They made themselves the victim and consolidated power.
Yeah.
And Germany went on its old Heil Hitler trip for the next 12 years. 1951.
It's a little trip.
Yeah.
They went on a little trip.
The little Heil Hitler, we are the master race. That trip, yes. They remember it well. I think it's in all the history books.
Yeah, something like that.
1951. The 22nd Amendment, which effectively limited the two terms of limited to the number of terms a U.S. president may serve, was ratified. Okay. Hard to say for some reason. 1967, St. Kitts and Nevis with Anguilla became independent states associated with the United Kingdom. So more places breaking free from the, although tentatively, right, with little, tendrils of support, because they probably have no raw materials. don't have any oil or any kind of steel, so they gotta have some. Anyway, St. Kitts and Nevis, happy birthday. You're sort of countries of your own. 1967, during a news broadcast, American journalist Walter Cronkite, who was considered the most trusted man in America, broke from his usual objectivity to predict the Vietnam War could end only in a protracted stalemate. His commentary was credited with changing U.S. public's opinion of the conflict, and of course, it was so influential, we got it there 5 years later. I don't know. 1973, 200 members of American Indian movement forcefully took the reservation hamlet of Wounded Knee, South Dakota. I remember that. That was cool. I was cheering for the Indians. Give them back their land, you bastards. 1991, the U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush ordered the ceasefire effective at midnight and declared victory in the Persian Gulf War, which was not really a war. It was just a lot of bombing and troops surrendering. Iraqi troops surrendering to reporters because they were hungry. A conflict triggered by Iraq's invasion and occupation of Kuwait in August 1990. 2008, American editor William F. Buckley Jr., who became an important intellectual influence in politics as the founder and editor of the National Review, died at the age of 82. Also on this day, dying was Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock from Star Trek,
man.
passed away on this day in 2015 at the age of 83. So Mr. Spock got one more year than William F. Buckley did. I hope he lived long and prospered, and he did, I believe.
He really did. If you watch the documentary on his life,
83, yeah.
he had a crazy life and a good one, too.
Yeah, he was also Mission Impossible. Actually, there was a boat right after Star Trek was off. He was on Mission Impossible. So the original show. 2010, on this day, Chile, struck by an earthquake and tsunami. On this day in 2010, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck Chile, causing widespread damage and triggering a tsunami that devastated coastal areas. The most powerful earthquake to strike the region since 1960. 8.8. I think the mountains, I think the Andes grew about 20 feet that day. Jeez. Feature biography, Constantine the First, apparently was born this day. It doesn't say what year, but he died on May 22nd, 337 near Izmit, Turkey, but his birthday is not listed. So how do we know this was his birthday? Other birthdays today, Joanne Woodward, American actress, born 1930, wife of Paul Newman. Elizabeth Taylor, we call Ralph Nader's birthday, American lawyer and politician and consumer advocate Ralph Nader, born in 1934, 90th birthday. Josh Groban, born in 1981, American singer. It is his birthday. And what other day is it? It's National Strawberry Day, National Polar Bear Day, National Retro Day, and National Kahlua Day. Also, Anosmia Awareness Day. Do you know what anosmia is?
No, tell me what it is.
Okay.
I saw that as well. I was like, what the hell is that?
Anosmia Awareness Day brings attention to a condition causing the loss of smell. All of our senses, smell perhaps is taken for granted more than any other, unless you get on a really stinky bus. Then you're like, man, I wish I had no sense of smell.
Yeah.
There are many causes of anosmia. Most common reasons are due to upper respiratory or sinus nasal infections or disease. We are all experiencing a cold or allergy that's temporarily preventing us from smelling. There's also brain damage, or brain damage in my case. Anyway, back to you on October 27th. November, whatever, February 27th, 2024, before coffee.
All right, this has been Allison from the Netherlands where the sun is shining. I've opened my windows and because it's spring is starting, hopefully.
Yeah, here too.
Get ready for chocolate bunnies and Easter, and they're already selling it here because that's the next holiday. So they're already selling them in the stores. And
Lent.
We will see you tomorrow for Wacky and Weird Wednesday, where we're going to cover all the weird news that's been going on. Have a good one out there. Here's your mic drop moment.
Madam President, I associate myself with the words of Minister Kuleba of Ukraine and my colleagues from the European Union. But I am amazed at the tone and the content of the presentation by the Russian ambassador. And I thought I could be useful by correcting the record. Ambassador Nebendia has called Kiev the clients of the West. Actually, Kiev is fighting to be independent of anybody. He calls them a criminal Kiev regime. In fact, Ukraine has a democratically elected government. He calls them Nazis. Well, the president is Jewish, the defense minister is Muslim, and they have no political prisoners. He said that Ukraine was wallowing in corruption. Well, Alexei Navalny documented how honest and full of probity his own country is. He blamed the war on US neocolonialism. In fact, it is Russia that tried to exterminate Ukraine in the 19th century, again under the Bolsheviks, and it's the third attempt. He said that we are prisoners of Russophobia. Phobia means irrational fear. Yet we are being threatened almost every day by the former president of Russia and by Putin propagandists with nuclear annihilation. I put to you that it's not irrational. When Russia threatens us, we trust it. He said that we are denying Russia's security interests. Not true. We've only started rearming ourselves when Russia started invading her neighbors. He even said that Poland attacked Russia during World War II. What is he talking about? It's the Soviet Union that attacked Poland together with Nazi Germany on the 17th of September 1939. They even held a joint victory parade on the 22nd of September.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.